I could smell the roasted turkey before I even stepped inside my mother's dining room. Cinnamon, sage, and that familiar buttery cornbread scent drifted through the air, clinging to my silk blouse as if mocking me. The table looked like something out of a glossy lifestyle magazine. White linen, gold-trimmed china, crystal glasses catching the light. My mother, Linda, sat at the head of the table in her usual ivory sweater set, her hair perfectly sprayed into place. My older brother, Mark, laughed too loudly at something my sister-in-law, Rebecca, had said. Aunts and cousins filled the seats, their chatter blending into the clink of silverware. And me? I sat quietly at the far end, smoothing the cuff of my champagne-colored blouse, my silver bracelet catching a glint from the chandelier. I could feel the soft fabric beneath my fingertips, grounding me in the moment, reminding me not to react. One by one, plates were set down in front of everyone. Turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, a small, steaming mountain of Thanksgiving tradition. When the server reached my place, she hesitated. Then nothing. No plate. Just an empty space where my dinner should have been. Mark didn't look at me. My mother kept her eyes on the turkey platter. I bit back a smile. They thought this was their quiet little punishment, their unspoken reminder of the year I disgraced the family. They had no idea that, sitting beside me in a navy suit, my attorney, Daniel Harper, was about to change everything. It wasn't the first Thanksgiving they had tried to make me feel small. But the one 5 years ago was the last time I let it work. Back then, I was 26, fresh out of a messy breakup, and living in my mother's basement after losing my apartment. The economy was rough, my job at a small marketing firm had been cut, and every conversation with my family felt like a reminder that I had failed at adulting. That year, the table looked just as perfect as it did now, but the air felt sharper, full of judgment disguised as concern. Maybe if you hadn't gone for one of those useless liberal arts degrees, you wouldn't be in this position, Uncle Steve had said, stabbing at his green beans. Rebecca smirked and sipped her wine. I mean, not everyone's cut out for the corporate world, right? The lump in my throat grew heavier with every jab. My mother never defended me. She just pursed her lips, as if agreeing in silence. Then came the property conversation. Grandma Rose's house, the one with the wraparound porch and the big oak tree out front, was supposed to be split between me and Mark after she passed. But that day, I overheard them in the kitchen, voices low but not low enough. Emily's not responsible enough to handle an inheritance, my mother said. Mark replied, yeah, I'll just take care of it. She can stay here if she needs a roof. When I walked in, they didn't even look guilty. My mother turned, holding a wine glass, and said, sweetheart, this is for the best. It felt like someone had poured ice water into my veins. My hands trembled, but I forced them still. I wanted to scream, but instead, I just nodded slowly. After dinner, Grandma Rose found me on the porch, staring at the frost on the railings. She handed me a thin velvet pouch, the kind that feels soft and important in your palm. Inside was a gold key. This isn't for the house, she whispered. It's for your own door, the one you'll buy someday. Don't let them decide your worth, Emily. That night, I packed my things. No announcement, no tears at the door. I left their world behind with nothing but a duffel bag, a resume, and that small gold key tucked into my pocket, a promise to myself that I would never sit at a table where I wasn't welcome, unless I owned the table. Leaving that night was like stepping off a cliff with no idea where I'd land. I took a job as a receptionist at a downtown law firm. Not glamorous, but it paid the rent for a tiny studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and a view of the alley. I worked days answering phones and nights freelancing as a social media manager for small businesses. The hours were brutal. There were nights when I fell asleep at my laptop, lipstick smudged on my chin, coffee gone cold beside me. But for the first time, the work I was doing was mine. That's where I met her, Claire Bennett, one of the firm's senior partners. She was the kind of woman people noticed the moment she walked into a room. Sharp navy suits, perfect posture, and eyes that could read you in 2 seconds flat. One evening, she overheard me on the phone coaching a small bakery owner through an online marketing campaign. Ever thought about doing that full-time? She asked. I laughed. Not unless someone pays me for it. She smiled in that way powerful people do when they already know the answer. Within a month, she introduced me to one of her clients, a struggling boutique chain looking to rebrand. I took the project on weekends, pouring every ounce of creativity I had into it. When their sales doubled in 3 months, they paid me more than I'd made in half a year at the law firm. That was my turning point. I registered my own business, Harper Digital Strategies. I didn't broadcast it on social media. My family still thought I was working a desk job downtown. That was fine by me. The fewer people knew, the better. The first year was a grind. I learned to negotiate contracts, manage taxes, and market my own brand while juggling multiple clients. I lost a few deals to bigger agencies, but I also scored my first national campaign with a cosmetic startup. The night I signed that contract, I took the velvet pouch out of my desk drawer. The gold key was still there, warm from my palm. I promised myself that when I bought my first property, I'd hang that key in a frame. 2 years later, I did. It wasn't just any property, it was Grandma Rose's house. Mark had put it on the market after some bad investments, and I bought it quietly through a holding company. I renovated it, restoring every detail she loved, down to the lace curtains and porch swing. By then, Harper Digital Strategies was thriving. My clients ranged from tech startups to national retailers. I had a small staff, an office in a renovated loft downtown, and, ironically, a law firm on retainer. Daniel Harper, my lead attorney, wasn't just brilliant. He was strategic. One day, he said, "You'll have to decide whether you want to keep letting your family underestimate you, or if you want to show them exactly who you've become." I didn't answer then, but I knew that day was coming. And as it turned out, it would arrive on a cold November afternoon, with a turkey in the oven and my name still missing from the dinner plates. Daniel sat quietly beside me at the far end of the table, his navy suit crisp, his leather briefcase resting by his chair. To everyone else, he probably looked like a polite +1, though my family had no idea who he really was. The conversations swirled around us, Mark talking about his big deals, Rebecca discussing their vacation plans to the Bahamas. Not a single question directed at me, not even a token, "How's work?" I'd been invisible for years, and today they intended to keep me that way. Halfway through the meal, my mother dabbed her lips with a linen napkin and said, "Emily, I hope you don't mind, we're having dessert early. Mark and I have some paperwork to go over for the house." The house. Oh. I tilted my head, my voice calm. "Which house?" Mark glanced at me as if I'd grown a second head. "Grandma Rose's place. We're finalizing the buyer today." I leaned back in my chair. "Interesting. You didn't think to tell me?" Rebecca gave a little laugh. "Well, sweetie, you've never really been involved in these matters." That's when Daniel cleared his throat. "Actually, she's been very involved." The table went quiet. My mother's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "Daniel Harper," he said smoothly, opening his briefcase. "Emily's attorney." Mark barked out a laugh. "Attorney? For what?" Daniel slid a thick folder onto the table. "For the property you're referring to, the one Emily purchased 2 years ago, through her holding company." The sound of forks clinking onto plates echoed in the silence. "That's impossible," my mother said, her voice shaky. "Mark owns." "Correction," Daniel interrupted, flipping the folder open to reveal the deed. "Emily owns it. The full title, free and clear. She's been paying the taxes, covering maintenance, and even funding the renovations. I have the records here." My family's eyes darted between the documents and me, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief to something else entirely, shame. I reached for my water glass, taking a slow sip. I didn't see the point in mentioning it before. "You all seemed confident about my limitations." Mark's face flushed crimson. "You went behind our backs." "No," I said, my voice firm but even. "I went forward. You were the one standing still." Rebecca's smirk had vanished, replaced by tight lips and darting eyes. My mother's hand trembled as she set down her napkin. Daniel pulled out one last document. "Emily has a proposal for how the property will be used moving forward." I stood, smoothing my blouse. "The house will remain in the family, but under my terms." And as for any gatherings there, well, let's just say no one will be left without a plate again. The chandelier light caught on the gold bracelet at my wrist, the one I'd bought the day I framed Grandma Rose's key. I caught my mother looking at it, and for the first time in years, she didn't look at me with pity. She looked unsure. "You've been hiding all this?" she asked softly. "No," I said. "I've been building it. Quietly. While you assumed I had nothing to bring to the table." Mark sank back in his chair, silent for once. Rebecca reached for her wine glass with a hand that wasn't steady. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth was on the table now, in black ink and legal signatures, and it was heavier than any insult they'd ever thrown my way. Daniel closed the folder with a quiet snap. "Shall we move on to dessert?" For the first time that night, I smiled. "Yes. I think we should." The pumpkin pie was cut, the coffee poured, but the air around the table was thick, not with cinnamon and spice, but with the weight of an unspoken shift. I waited until everyone had a slice before I spoke again. "My attorney will be leaving shortly, but before he does, there are a few conditions regarding the use of Grandma Rose's house." Mark scoffed, though it lacked the force it once had. "Conditions? It's family property." "It's my property," I corrected gently. "And I'm choosing to keep it in the family, as long as certain standards are met." Rebecca crossed her arms. "Such as?" I slid a piece of paper from the folder Daniel had left with me. "First, any gathering at the house will be inclusive. No one, and I mean no one, is left out. Not at the table, not in conversation. That includes me, or anyone else you think doesn't measure up." Mark rolled his eyes but said nothing. "Second," I continued, "everyone who uses the house for family events will contribute to its upkeep. Financially, or through hands-on work, mowing the lawn, maintaining the porch, cleaning after events. No one gets a free ride." My mother's eyes flickered at that, but she didn't speak. "Third," I said, "and this one's important, I want each of you to pursue one personal goal you've been putting off. Something that actually matters to you, not to keep up appearances. It could be taking a course, fixing a relationship, starting a project you've been afraid to try. You'll share it with me, and we'll hold each other accountable." Rebecca gave a short, skeptical laugh. "And if we don't?" "Then," I said, setting the paper down, "the house will be sold to the highest bidder. And given the location, it won't be a buyer who cares about family heritage." Silence. I softened my tone. "I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing it because Grandma Rose's house deserves more than to be just a pretty backdrop for shallow traditions. She believed in this family, all of it. I'm giving you a chance to live up to that." My mother's voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "And if we try? Then the house will always be here for birthdays, holidays, barbecues, whatever we want. I'll host the first gathering myself, and I'll make sure every plate is full." Mark stared at his pie like it had the answers. Rebecca avoided my gaze. But my mother, she nodded slowly, almost as if she were seeing me for the first time in years. "I think," she said, "your grandmother would approve." "Good," I replied, pushing my chair back. "Then we have an understanding." The rest of dessert was quieter, but not uncomfortable. Something had shifted, a recognition that the balance of power wasn't where it used to be. And this time, I wasn't on the losing side. 2 weeks later, I stood on the porch of Grandma Rose's house, the winter sun casting long shadows across the yard. The renovations were complete, fresh paint, repaired shutters, and the porch swing restored to its gentle creak. Inside, the smell of cinnamon and coffee filled the air as my family arrived one by one. Mark carried a tray of deviled eggs, Rebecca brought a pie, and my mother, she brought flowers. Yellow roses. I watched them greet each other with awkward, but genuine warmth. Mark even asked me where to set the food without sounding defensive. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. Over the following weeks, I saw the change I'd hoped for. Mark enrolled in a financial planning course. Rebecca started a photography project she'd been talking about for years. My mother began volunteering at a local library. They weren't perfect. Old habits take time to break. But there was effort now, and that effort mattered. One evening, after everyone had left, I walked into the living room and glanced at the mantel. There, in a small glass frame, was the gold key Grandma Rose had given me. Next to it sat a photo of her at this very table, laughing, her hands mid-gesture. I touched the frame gently. "We're getting there, Grandma," I whispered. The house felt different now, not because of the renovations, but because of the energy inside it. It wasn't just a stage for polite hostility anymore. It was starting to become what she'd always wanted, a place where family meant inclusion, not exclusion. As I turned off the lights and headed toward the door, I thought about that first Thanksgiving when I left. I remembered the lump in my throat, the sting of being dismissed, the cold air on my face as I walked away with nothing but that key in my pocket. Now, I locked the door behind me, the actual key warm in my hand, and smiled. This time, I wasn't the one left out. This time, I owned the table and every seat at it,